Finally, I'm not recording all of my episodes in one day, doing this on a different day. But welcome back to the Thought Bubble series, episode 8, I believe. And the topic that I wanted to talk about today is something that, not that I've been afraid of, but it's the topic of why I think it's a lot harder to make friends now or kind of form relationships. And so there's a few things that I think have kind of led up to this. One is I think a lot of times now there's a lot of lack of social circle or like places to be social. I don't know if it's like a normal thing, but I think one of the stories or things that I talked with a professor a long time ago about was how basically bowling alleys were having a hard time like having leagues or like it was hard to get in a bowling league because just there's just a lack of bowling leagues. And it's like part of it could be like, especially in like the state where I'm in, that bowling is not like super popular. But I think it's just you see kind of all these lanes closing, and basically we only have one public bowling alley where people can go, or like one or two. And so the lack of people signing up for bowling leagues is kind of an interesting like thought in itself. But I think the main idea or concept behind it was basically that like people are less willing to kind of go out and join a bowling league or do things with their friends, and they'd much rather just kind of like chill with who they know and stay inside. Which is like I think there's like it's fine to do it, but also at the same time it's like if everybody does that, then you miss out on a lot of potential social interactions you could have with like either new people, new friends, classmates at reunions or stuff like that. Like for example, I mean I'm gonna partially dog on them, but my school is having a luau, which for those of you who don't know, it's just kind of like a get together. It's like a big like Hawaiian dinner, and I basically spent a lot of time trying to convince people to go, and a lot of people would be like, "Oh, like I'm only gonna go if like X person goes," or not like I don't really want to go because I'm worried about seeing other people, and I'm just sitting there like, you know, how can we be like this, like afraid of social circles or like this like one event, because like if you're not willing to do it with people that you've gone to high school with for 4 years or like even like before that, right? Because I ended up moving high schools and so I ended up joining. But like if we can't even do that, then it's like, do you not even like want to do other things with people you don't actually know? So like, like go out to like a bar or something on a Friday or on a Saturday night or something like that. You know what I mean? Like those kinds of things. And I think my group's in a different place because I think a lot of us like are pretty onliners. Like we like to play video games. We like to, it's like your stereotypical kind of definition of like the like computer nerds, because we're all like a lot of us are STEM majors, a lot of us are pretty busy, right? And so sometimes it is helpful to like just kind of hop on like Discord and play games or whatever and chill. But I think sometimes like when we're trying to plan things or go out and be social, then it's just kind of like this like hesitancy too, which I know my group isn't like representative of every friend group that's out there in the world, but it is like kind of a worrying thing that things like bowling leagues are like dropping people, or like they're having a hard time to find people sometimes, or like all of these sorts of things. And like I feel like this lack of spaces where people feel comfortable of being social is kind of one thing I think that makes it harder to meet new people or make new friends. I think part of it is also like personal too. I think I'm also in that same camp as my friend groups, like as my friend group. Like um I am perfectly fine with the friend circle that I have. I think there's some days where I'm thinking too hard, or like I'm basically in my bag, and then I'm kind of just sitting there like, I feel like I'm being antisocial, like I should try and make new friends, etc., etc., etc. And it's like, I think the ideas behind that are not necessarily just to like make new friends. Sometimes those come from a place of like just wanting to like up the ego a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But like I think part of it is like internalized of feeling like it's kind of almost like an engineering thing of this is another topic I want to explore later on, but basically the idea was that like keeping things the same or keeping like things as they are is like not good enough, and that you always have to be like constantly progressing. So that applies very much to like my job and how I work, but also I think it applies to like how I view like social circles of like if I'm not like making new friends, or if I'm not going out and like talking to people, or basically going out in like public spheres and just like hanging out or talking or meeting new people, then I feel like I'm like stagnating in a sense, which kind of like doesn't kill my mental, because I think it's also not fair for the other people to or like other people that I meet, that like I only want to just form this friendship to like feed my like need to talk to people, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's like the right way to put it, because it sounds really toxic. It probably is a really toxic thing. It sounds really toxic, but like kind of like the idea that like I'm stagnating and I'm just using them to like feed some idea that I have in my head that like is not actually what I want, and it's just kind of a like one of those like weird late night thoughts where like you think about it and you're like, wow, that was terrible and I should never think about that ever again. But I think that's partially part of the reason why that I've been thinking about it a little bit more. And then I think of course, I think the pandemic that we had didn't really help, because for basically a whole 2 3 years we're kind of just sitting inside chilling. And so you kind of just build the habit of like, why go out to the arcades and do all that if I can just like play games on my phone, or like play games from my house or wherever I am in my apartment, right? So that's kind of part of it. And then I think a big thing too, I think, is like social media driven of a lot of times when you look, a lot of like creators or people like that will have a lot of like big friend circles, or like, they're going out, they're like not afraid to talk to people, not afraid to like go out and meet people. And then it's kind of just like, you see all of that like joy and happiness, and then you're kind of just like, why can't I do that? You know what I mean? But I think that's like it's always like a dangerous comparison, because like when you're looking at social media, a lot of times it's like, I mean, everyone gives you the speech, right? Like social media is always going to be curated. Like you're going to be shown basically what people want you to see. And a lot of the times it's like an idealized or perfect version of their life. And so, I think making that comparison in the first place is super, super unhealthy. But I think also at the same time, it's just kind of like you see all of these like big social circles, and then you're like, why can't I have that? Or like, why am I not happy? And it's like, well, like you should like get out there more and like go talk to people. And then so like you kind of do it for the wrong reason. And I think that's also why you kind of end up in situations where I am in, where like it feels like you're stagnating or not making progress, or like there's something wrong if you're not going out and making friends. And so I think partially it's like there's not enough spaces, and then there's also the fact that I think people are doing it for the wrong reason, or trying to make friends for the wrong reason, and they're doing it not because of the relationship itself, like the connection you can make with other people, but more so it's like kind of in the sense of you're making a friend to feed your own ego, or like to feed your need to like have like some sort of like friend, or like basically like it's self gas, you know what I'm saying? And then I think the third thing that I thought about was like, I don't know if this is true or not. This could be a hot take, because this is coming from a guy who has like never had a relationship ever, or never been on dating apps. Do not use those shits. I'm swearing for this one. We letting it fly. Do not use them, brother. Like just stay off of it. It's so much. Your life is going to be so much better. And basically I think my main point about it is that I think a lot of people nowadays are searching for instant gratification. I kind of mentioned the idea in the last video ish. I don't think it's like related, but like basically the idea of you relate good and bad based on what happens in the immediate. And I think a lot of people focus too hard on what you can do for me in the here and now, or like kind of like, I know first impressions are always important, right? Like whoever you meet, right? Like if they like come up yelling in your face, like even if they come back later, you're still gonna have that picture of them in your head, right? But like I think people are just want like instant gratification on things, which is why you have like a lot of dating apps or stuff like that, or things that are like built to drive short term, kind of like the TikTok brain, like, the ADHD brain, like basically like to drive a lot of short term interest. And then what I feel like that leads to a lot of times is that like people aren't willing to sit down and talk for a long time or like build meaningful relationships sometimes, because they're just kind of searching for like basically a quick high in dopamine. And a lot of times it leads to people feeling like, if you're on the other side of that where you feel like you're just being used to fill some sort of like happiness quota or whatever, like it leaves you feeling bad. And then so like in return you're just kind of like, well, if I had such a bad experience, you kind of just naturally like shy away from it, which I think could lead into like the first point I had with like the lack of social circles, or people just more willing to kind of just chill in their house, after work, or like stay inside. And so I think that could be a part of it. I have no clue if that's true, but like please let me know in the comments. But like I think that is like a thing that people are so quick to chase like immediate like payoffs rather than like build meaningful relationships with people. And so you kind of end up in a lot of times like not being fulfilled in terms of like your social aspect or like the social need. And then I think this is more of a me thing too, but I think one of the things that I'm also working on is like getting over a fear of failure. I know it like sounds like one of those like like aura farm, you know what I mean? Like the only thing I'm afraid of is failure. But like for me, it's kind of been a thing throughout my life that I feel like I've had a lot of expectations put on my shoulders, especially as an only child. And so when you put a lot of expectations on yourself, a lot of times like you are not necessarily trying to like hit some goal necessarily, but it's more so like it turns from trying to achieve things to being afraid to fail on the opposite end, or like not reach whatever goal or thing you set for yourself. And so I had a long lot of years where I felt like I was coming up short, and it basically blew up my mental for a long time. But I think I'm still trying to get over it, but I think it kind of resonates with a lot of other people too, where people are just kind of afraid of people saying no, or like shutting them down, or like basically rejecting them in whatever context, whether it's just like on a friend's level or even if it's like a romantic level, right, in a relationship. But I think people are afraid to like basically get told no, or like I'm okay, or like et cetera, right? And so like if you're afraid of that, then you're never willing to try. And so I think for sure it's kind of like a mix of a lot of things. I just wish like one for myself. I think for myself, I think I wish that like I could be a little bit less focused on like the what ifs, which kind of I mentioned in the previous episode. But like basically the idea is I want to be more like in the moment and just like go for things and like be more open minded, and not focus too much on like what if like this person says no, or like what if they fail, or like what if like the outcome isn't exactly what I want it to be in like your idealized version in your brain. And then on the other side, I think it's just hard because sometimes there's just not a lot of opportunities, like for example, the alumni luau that we have. I know it's like an like very niche thing, but it happens once every like 5 years, right? Like you only get to see these people for 5 years, and some of them like will go and work in the mainland, some of them will go overseas, and so you probably might not see these people again. And so things like that are like just taking the opportunities to um basically be a bit more open and like not be afraid to socialize or talk to people, or talk to someone new, or ask them about something. I think a lot more people, I think there's a lot more success to be had if you just try. And but because people are afraid of like failing in social relationships, you don't ever try. And so, you know not to say that like you should force yourself to be a bit more social, because I think everyone has a social battery, right? Like there's some days where I just like don't talk to anybody at work. I just show up, set up my stuff, sit there, do my work, put my stuff back in my bag, and leave. You know what I mean? But if you feel like you have room in your social capacity to do it, and the only thing holding you back is yourself. Like I feel like just try to take the chance, go out, talk to people, be a bit more social. If it means joining a bowling league, join a bowling league. I know I'm gonna try because I feel like I'm getting a bit better. So hopefully I can do that. But yep, just trying to be a bit more social. I feel like it's like hard to make friends sometimes, but that's life. I think part of it is self-inflicted. Actually, a lot of it is probably self-inflicted, but yeah, that's my ideas on why I think it's a little bit difficult to make friends. But hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts again. Um I don't know what else to say. I guess if you like the video, subscribe. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think. As always, I'm interested to hear any and all thoughts. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you later.